Hey guys, I'm Naya. Welcome back to the channel. For today's video, I decided to bring to you Prank Kit's choke points because I think it's important that when I mention some of the decks, especially Prank Kits, since I'm familiar with them and since I love the deck so much, to also bring forward, to also bring forward some weaknesses of the deck to remind you of some things and maybe give some tips as to when you can disrupt them, at which point, with which hand traps and techs being used overall in the meta right now that you can also use when it comes to the Prank Kits matchups. And yeah, just give a couple general tips since I'm playing the deck and have been playing it for some time, and I'm pretty sure I can tell when certain things hurt the most. And as mentioned, we will be focusing especially on cards that hinder Prank Kits the most and also cards that are actually being played right now, because I also plan on bringing to you a video of techs, side deck cards, something along those lines. I have a couple things in mind, not quite decided yet. But these cards that we will be mentioning today are some of those, because obviously we want to tailor our side decks and main decks with cards applicable to every single matchup if we can do that in the meta at the moment. So first of all, Ashe. Obviously, and this has been widely known for some time now, Ashe on the first Prank Kit is probably the best thing you can do. However, Prank Kits did change a bit with the addition of adventurer stuff, and obviously, not only do they put up a negate, but also chain block the first Prank Kit. So if they did open a way to the Brave engine, you might want to use that Ashe on the Rite of Aramesir or Water Enchantress, because at that point, if they get that engine online, you won't be ashing anytime soon anyway. So there is that to point out, and they will use the negate for something other than just Ashe because they can chain block. They will just go normal summon a Prank Kit, link it into Meow, and then use the Fateful Adventure effect to surge the Draco back, going chain link one Prank Kit, chain link two Fateful, so there is no way for you to Ashe. So you might as well Ashe there or the place, which is also a good option. The next thing would be Gamma. Now, Gamma can be used in decks like Brigade and also Dragon Link, for example, in the main deck quite successfully, because they do have a lot of cards that sort of bait Ashe, you could say, in some of the hand traps, and Gamma is very much applicable also in Dragon Link to synchro into synchro 8s. But yeah, what you would want to Gamma, and I have thought that for some time now. Obviously we all like to throw everything we can at the first Prank Kit in Grave, but I would not suggest you do that when it comes to Gamma, just because there is an option for your opponent, so the Prank Kit player, to have Pandemonium. So if they have a Pandemonium and if they have also a name, which can happen because most of the time you will play all of that at 3. However, Pandemonium has been seen at only 2 copies, which I play only 2 copies right now, but there's always an option for them to have a Pandemonium. So why would you want to waste your Gamma and at that point risk them having Pandemonium or follow-up pranks, whatever, since also something to be noted is we all like to search pranks with the Doodle search just because it grants us follow-up if we get Nibiru'd, and other than that, you're gonna send Pandemonium with the green one anyway and then get it back with Doodle. So at that point you would much rather have follow-up in your hand, at least I would personally. So this is an extender that you for sure know they have. So with all of that being said, I would want to Gamma Doodle add back if I were you. So basically when they go that effect and then you Gamma, I think that's good. Or the Water Enchantress. That's pretty much the same thing as Ashe. If they get that online, you're gonna have to pair 2 hand traps together when it comes to the Brave engine, sadly. And also Ghost Ogre. This has been seen to rise in popularity, and I think it's such a good hand trap, and when it does see play in certain formats, I always love that. And you can Ogre the Fateful Adventure or the Griffin Rider, whichever you want, quite successfully. You obviously would want to probably Ogre the Fateful Adventure just because they can use the effect again on the following turn. So why not ogre that at that point if you were gonna ogre the Griffin Rider anyway? And also you can use it on something like pranks, you can use it on place if they use the second effect, if you just really want to get rid of it, if you don't see any better implication. But since Ghost Ogre has been played, why not use it against prank kids? Because it's honestly not that bad, especially when it comes to the Brave Engine. Now, when it comes to cards like Chalice, Impermanence, Veiler, also Droplet, and Dark Ruler, we can mention that as well. Basically, to put it briefly, these kinds of cards were never very much applicable in the Pranked matchup besides Droplet, just because what would you imp? Like, legit. Doodle is just going to get something back from the graveyard if they make a second one, and the second best thing you could do is imperm the Rocket Ride. So what I would suggest you do is wait with your Impermanence or Veiler or something like that on the summon of Rocket Ride if they decide to go for that type of combo, because it's not a quick effect. They won't be able to tag it out to chain, and it's just going to get negated, and the only thing they have at that point is the Pranked name, not the additional 2 prank kits that Rocket Ride provides. So this would be the best way to use it. However, if the Brave Engine is live, you might just want to pair it up with a second hand trap if you have something like Veiler that you can only use on your opponent's turn. So if you have a combination of Veiler Nibiru, first of all, you're very good. Second of all, you might want to use it. But if you have something like Impermanence, just use it on your turn and get rid of the Griffin Rider. And then if you have an additional card like Cyclone, something like that, also, you're very good and congrats to you. But you will be able to get rid of the back row, and this would be the best thing to do. Or just play through the Butler Pop if you can with your engine. Now, when it comes to something like Dark Ruler, they have the Griffin Riders. So if you want to Dark Ruler at that point, if you know you're going to be able to play through Butler, that's something to take into account looking at what deck you actually play. So it's not a general piece of advice I would give, just because it's sort of does not feel worth it to put some of these cards in, because it's not guaranteed that the Brave Engine will always be online. So that's something to take into account as well. If you decide to Chalice the Butler, you would need to have an extender to keep going. So if you sort of start with your plays, you have Chalice, maybe don't commit too much if you can afford, of course. And then when they Butler, you Chalice, they need to chain. If they don't want to, they can leave it on, but I don't know why they would do that. So they will need to chain, and then you need to have an extender. One of the best cards in this matchup would be Droplet, and of course I would suggest to Droplet Butler and also the Griffin Rider, and just send monsters so they cannot chain the negation or chain Butler again. So Droplet, a very, very, very good card going second against Brankets. Now a card I've seen be played a bit has been evenly matched, especially with the rise in popularity when it comes to trap decks. Sadly, but we know we have things to deal with them, and evenly being one of them. If you have them in your side deck anyway, you might want to side them in against prank kids, because having our entire board taken hurts a lot. You seriously need to decide what you want to keep. So you'll be able to tell, we don't always set a lot of things, so if we keep things set, we probably have Pandemonium, but it's not guaranteed that we have all 3 names in our hand, just because at the end of the combo, if you go for the standard one, where you have enough cards in your graveyard to shuffle back in end phase, you're gonna have a prank kid on field. I usually like to put the green one there just because it has 2k defense, and then add the water and the fire with Bow Wow on the following turn. This is I guess, the perfect way to go into the opponent's turn if you're the prank kid player. And at that point, if you get evenly, you're gonna have to decide, and you probably won't have a third name in hand. Maybe you bricked or got really lucky and you have it, but if you do not, evenly hurts a lot. Then we have the standard things: Cosmic Cyclone, Twin Twister on standby phase. I beg of you, do it on standby phase, because Pandemonium is only in the main phase. And if you have an extender, if you have multiples, of course you can play around all of that, maybe sort of bait it out if you don't want to snipe it, if the pranked player sets multiple things. But if they do not, just get rid of that Pandemonium, and then you don't need to deal with it. The next one, a blow-up card, is Lightning Storm. Now, it has been made more accessible with the reprint, so if you do side Lightning Storm for the aforementioned matchups, you might want to side it in against Prankits as well, because it does force out Pandemonium. So, of course, you're not going to do it on the monsters. First of all, they're usually in defense, and they're protected by Bow Wow, so please don't forget that. You don't care about monsters, just do it on the back row. And then Called By is actually a neat card to keep in going second if you want to Called By the Bow Wow, because like I said before, especially with them having the Brave engine online, they're going to be playing sort of into Nibiru, if you want to put it that way, so they will end on Bow Wow, and then you can Called By the Gravid. Now, yes, they will have the Griffin Rider, and with everything I'm mentioning, you need to take into account that is something that most of the time is going to be there. But at the end of the day, you don't open the perfect hand all the time. So if that engine is not online, those kinds of examples that I'm giving in this video are very much applicable. So just Called By the Bow Wow, get rid of it. Now, if they have that engine, you're just gonna have to sort of pair it up with a second thing and also try to play through the board if your deck can afford to do so. And then the last thing to mention would be Nibiru. I could go into a whole discussion about Nibiru, but I would try to be brief. If they have the Brave engine, pair it up with something like Valor or Impermanence. If the Brave engine is not online, I was thinking about this. What I would do is more than likely Nibiru on the 5th summon. Just because the 5th summon is the summon of Prankid off of the 2nd Prankid. So at that point, they will have one Prankid and a Doodle. And you would want to Nibiru there because the Prankid player is just going to go Doodle effect and have 2 additional cards in their hand. And you don't want to give them any kind of extender, additional card, nothing like that. And I realize it's risky just because with some of the extenders, they can go into Anaconda, they can go into Butler, because on the 5th summon, they will have all of the 3 colors in the graveyard. For example, if they start with something like Fire, the second one for me I like to do it to be the green one. And then the third one is Water. So at that point, they have everything if they're playing the Thunder Dragon Fusion. So that's something to take into account. But I would not, risk them having Thunder Dragon Fusion or Pandemonium to follow things up, make Rocket Ride, do other plays, just because it's sort of like they need to have a lot of cards. For them having Pandemonium, they would also need to have 2 additional names that preferably one of them has not used the effect yet, and it's just something that is not going to happen more than likely. So I would Nibiru there just because I don't want to have them, getting any kind of additional resources. And I wanted to just quickly go over a couple things that I've seen be played in side decks and sort of the implications that they might have if you decide to main those cards, because something like Lancia, Droll, I have seen in main decks as well. Now, my opinion on hand traps overall is maybe use hand traps in your deck if you know your meta for sure that you're going to have some of the players of certain decks at the event you're going to. Otherwise, I would just stick to straight going second cards because you don't want to sort of play hand traps that are not applicable all the time. But if you do decide to main something like Lancia, something like Droll, my advice to you would be, first of all, with the Droll, the only thing you lock your opponent out of when it comes to Prankits would be if they go for the Brave engine and they search with Water Enchantress, then you lock them out of the Faithful search and the Doodle search. But that's pretty much it. And when it comes to Lancia, I would suggest you shotgun it on standby phase just because of the Water Enchantress. And yeah, that would be pretty much it. Hopefully you learned something, hopefully you gained something from this video, and hopefully I gave you some ideas as to when to disrupt the Prankit player, what sort of cards you can play and use in your strategy. If I did, cool. Make sure to give the video a like, give me a sub, check out Twitch and my Discord, and I will see you in the next one. Peace!